Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Moorjani, the Associate Dean here at CIU, and today we are blessed by the company of our URR and IRB chair. In the last podcast, Doc, we talked about URR, and I think in this one we should focus a little bit more about the Institutional Review Board, that is the IRB. So, what do you think, Doc? Is IRB a good topic to talk about today?
Yeah, greetings everyone. This is Dr. Talboys. I'm the chair of URR and IRB groups. And like Dr. Moorjani said, we talked about the URR earlier, which is part of the entire process for clearing the doctoral work to go on to the very last step and get approved in written, reviewed, and then defended and completed so that our doctoral students can graduate. We have two processes. One is internal and one is external. The URR, University Research Review, is internal. That's done by the URR group and with advice from chairs, with advice from committees, all of those groups who are involved in making sure the product, the students' research, is ready to move on to the next piece, is ready to be signed off on and for the next piece. IRB, institutional research process, is different. That's an external control. That is overseen by actually the part of the U.S. government, the Health and Human Services. Now that it's not necessarily health related unless you are doing a doctoral dissertation in healthcare, psychology, pieces like that. But our work, our research work, does fall under the auspices of Health and Human Services because in fact, most of our students use human subjects as sources of data. The Institutional Research Board or equivalent bodies are a core protection for human participants in research in the United States, and not only in the United States, but 80 other countries, more than 80 other countries around the world. It's an independent evaluation, and it's provided to make sure that research is ethical, and it is designed to make sure that the person doing the research is conducting ethical research and not doing any particular harm, whether intended or not, on the human subjects. This came about, actually, it's relatively recent in the big scheme of things, if you're as old as I am. It was passed in 1974. I was already, working and being out there in 1974. Some of you who are younger, that might seem like ancient history, but it was passed by it's called the National Research National Research Act, and it was done in response to a lot of unethical research being done. Brings to mind the Tuskegee study where they were purposely infecting people with diseases in order to study the reaction of medicine. This act established the modern institutional research board system for regulating research involving human subjects. And then they formed the National Commission for Protection of Human Subjects in Biomedical and Behavioral Research. And the commission identifies ethical principles to make sure that subjects are protected. In 1978, the National Committee issued the Belmont Report, and the Belmont Report came up with three fundamental principles. Now, you as research students, or any research student, has to take a class, a short class. It's an informational class. It's not testing or anything. Talks about the three fundamental ethical principles for research. Respect for the persons, which means you have to treat them as human beings, individuals, autonomous, which means they're not robots or rodents or fruit flies or whatever else you do in research, and treat them as autonomous agents and protect them, which means you don't want to diminish them from a human being to a lab rat, so to speak.
Basically, it's protecting the value and the image of who the data is. Like, if there are humans involved in data, we have to respect them as human beings
As
and not
human
consider
beings.
them as just a number in for which we're gathering the
Correct.
data from.
They
Okay.
are they're not lab rats. You want to protect the person's, you don't want to diminish their value as a human being. The second fundamental ethical principle is beneficence. Big word, beneficence, if you want to look it up. Do unto others, basically, as you would have them do unto you. That's how you would explain it. If you want to, bring it down to the spiritual thing, make sure you protect their well-being. And then lastly is justice. This is keeping them or protecting them for potential risks that could be borne by the research subject and by society in general. If you're doing research and you do something wrong and the results come out accordingly, and then you apply that to the whole society can be subject to it. And as you do unto one human being, you could possibly intentionally or unintentionally do to the rest. So anyway, Department of Health and Human Services created all this, and in 1991, this is a lot of background. The U.S. Federal Protection, H&HS, came up with a common rule, which says that all people doing all research in these 80 plus countries are kind of following the same rules. In the United States, it falls under Title 45 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 46. We don't really care about that because it's just a bunch of numbers. But that is actually on the form that you sign. The URR-IRB application form brings up that title. It highlights that title code in blue, so you could click on it if you're interested at all and open it up and see what it says. And it's got two parts. It talks about all the requirements in subsection A and all the requirement, the additional protection in subsection B. And this is particular, the subparts B, C, and D talk about who specifically is protected. Pregnant women, human fetuses, neonates, babies, things like that. C talks about additional protection for prisoners. We do have students who write do research projects on correctional facilities and things like that. They are covered, and we have to monitor that. The committee has to, and then D, protection of children, obviously. So it protects you, it protects your subjects, and it protects the university. You have to sign off on that. Your name is on that. Your chair's name is on that. URR and IRB chair is on that. And then eventually the administration signs off on it. So it's a protection. It's 4 levels of protection as it goes through. That's why we do this. And they're filed along. It's checked by your research chair, and along with IRB, you have to have certain consent forms. You get consent to do it within the organization you're doing the research. And let's say you're doing a jail, you have to get permission from the sheriff or the warden or whatever. And then you have to get permission. If every single subject you talk to, you have to get permission from them. You also have to take a CITI certification, which is a class that just goes over this. And you get a little certificate and you attach that to your files, and then any other required permission documents. And then, of course, we check it for plagiarism. That's also done internally and externally. If you're getting a grant, you're going to be specifically subject to that. Yeah, publications, etc. So that's pretty much, that's a lot of information, but it just says it's protecting people that are being researched by you, and it's protecting the companies, and it's protecting everyone else, and at the university, of course. That's pretty much it. And we take that seriously.
Yeah, of course, we have to, because at the end of the day, the credibility of your research depends upon the credibility of your data that you are bringing in.
and the person doing it.
Yes, and the person doing it, of course,
Yeah.
because we don't want to, and it's been seen in many parts of the world that people intend just to prove their hypothesis or just to prove their research correct. They alter the data or they manipulate the data in certain manner. So I think IRB and URR are good inputs there to as a threshold to check if everything is correct, everything is aligned or not. The next question that I'm interested in is, Doc, does this thing has a legal implication? For instance, if I'm checking somebody's IRB work and I find out that there is something wrong in it, does it comes with a legal implication for the researcher?
Yes, it can, especially, well, we have FERPA, which is
Yeah,
privacy.
of course.
And that right along, that immediately will get somebody's attention that you're violating their privacy rights, and they can come back and get after you, the researcher, the institution. And if
Mhm.
if the institution, in this case, the university or the college, doesn't get involved to stop that, and same with common rule or Title 45, if that's being violated, it's up to the institution through the IRB committee and group and the university, the
Mhm.
oversight committees. Somebody has to step in and say, well, you're missing consent forms, you haven't taken the
Mm.
yeah, so there's layers that protect it. Yes, legally, and if they find out that your data was falsified, again through plagiarism or falsification of data,
Yeah.
uh, you can also, by not
Misrepresentation.
including data, omission, lying
Yeah.
by omission, uh, bingo. Just think
Yeah.
how many things that are out there that say, well, really, we probably shouldn't have done that, like
Yeah.
artificial dyes, artificial colors. But if we just don't tell anybody, then
Yeah.
if they don't know, the ramifications of that eventually show up, and then they have to go back and say, you knew this was not
About this,
good,
yeah.
and you
Mm.
should have said something then. So yeah, there is legal ramifications.
Okay. Um, like you are the IRB board, you look at everybody's work and check if it is IRB aligned or not. Uh, what are the things that you actually, as the chair, look at to ensure that this work is appropriate for IRB and will pass it? Like, should we move forward to the outside agency that we were talking about?
I know the rules. I know the subparts B, C, D, A, B, C, D. I know what I'm supposed to look for. I've been to class, I've been training, I have all that. I'm going to add some more of you folks to help me with that because we're starting to get more and more research, and it's good to have more eyes on it. It's not just the IRB group, IRB committee, and me. It's the committee, it's the chair's responsibility. They all should be going through at least the CITI training.
Yeah.
I look to make sure, okay, who's it being done? Are children involved? Are pregnant women involved? Are
Mm.
prisoners involved? Are any
Mm.
other protected class involved? And
Mm.
then I have to make sure that all of the rules pertaining to subpart A, subpart B, et cetera, or subpart C and D are being protected, and then that the required forms are there. We have a form, a consent form, a
Yeah.
permission forms. Those are all those forms, and they're designed with Title 45 in mind, because they say, okay, you have to have this, this, and this. They don't provide us with the forms, but they say
Mm.
when you have the forms, you have to have this, this, and this covered.
Yes.
And then we also check on the validity and the reliability of the data. If the data says it's going to research or going to cover this,
Mhm.
does it really cover this? And we also make sure that there's no falsification by omission,
Yeah.
et cetera. There's a lot of things I
Misrepresentation of
look
data
for.
somewhere.
I clear up the technical, the scholastic, the writing parts in URR, but when it
Yeah.
comes to IRB, it's a whole different set of things that we look for, and we do take that seriously. And remember that
Yes.
you're involved, the committee's involved, you being the student is involved, the chairs are involved. Once somebody puts their name on there,
Yeah.
they're part of the
The part of the whole
problems.
mix. Yeah, they're part of the whole mix.
But if we show that we exercise due diligence, now, if you make a mistake, if somebody lies to you as the researcher and doesn't give you the true information, that's not your responsibility, but it at least shows that we have exercised due diligence in protecting the subjects of your research, you as students, us as the institution, and of course, if there's a grant involved,
something that I could figure out from what you were saying right now is what would be the 3 or 4 piece of advice that you would provide to the students, saying that, whenever you are applying for IRB, please ensure that these things are done properly. Otherwise, it is possible that your IRB review is rejected.
Make sure you get permission.
Permission from number one.
Permission from the place where you're doing the research.
Yes.
Also, permission from the subject that you can use their data. Now, we never use their name. We try to hide their identity as much as possible. Granted, if somebody really wanted to dig in, sometimes we even make them hide the names of the organization.
Yeah.
You have it in a file. Also, there are rules on protecting the data. So if you gather data and Joe Smith said this and this and this, you have to protect that file, you as the researcher, and you can file it away on a disk, not disk, we don't have disks anymore, but file it away on the computer, but it has to be protected in a file that only you, the researcher, have access to. Because if they come back and say, well, they didn't protect my information, well, you can say, oh, yes, I did. I locked it in here and I locked it in there. And I, put the key in a mayonnaise jar and hid it in the basement. And so nobody can get into it, that kind of stuff, hermetically sealed and all that. So, yeah, get their permission, get the organization's permission, especially if you're using potentially proprietary information. Sometimes the companies don't want you using their secrets. And regardless of how vague you are, and they tell you, no, I'm sorry, we don't want you doing research on our organization. And you go ahead and do it anyway and try to couch it or hide it by using the name of another organization. Eventually, they're going to figure it out.
The thing with research is eventually the truth comes out.
Eventually, it's not the admission that gets you in trouble. It's the cover-up. We can go back to Watergate. We can go back to this. We can go back to the. If you would just, okay, I did it. You got it. Okay, take it.
It's easier that way.
But I say, and I'm sorry. But the cover up is what gets you. Because the intent to deceive, oh, what a tangled web we weave when we try to deceive. That's a paraphrase. So be careful. And then, of course, you have to show that you've taken the CT training, CITI training. That's important. Say, okay, I took the training. I should have known better. And it explains what I did. It's just, not as long-winded. And then, of course, again, it's all about permission, and it's all about knowing who you're using and remember, be ethical, treat them as humans. They have the right for privacy. They have the right to be respected. They are not lab rats. Do not be Machiavellian in this, where the ends justify the means, where you're getting your degree, but at somebody else's expense. Be careful,
That is something that I tell to my DRP students, that try to reach out to 25 people as a data set, because out of the 25, 5 would not give you ample amount of time of the day or the information. And then you will feel frustrated because you cannot go back to them again and again nagging, because we have to ensure that we respect their privacy, we respect their time, and we respect the work they are doing. So it's always better to go on for a higher data set, because some of them will not give you the information on time.
They're humans. They have lives. They have families. They have Don't your research is not their priority. Yes, thank you for including me in your research, but I have a life to lead, and I am not at your beck and call, the research subject can say. So if I can't talk to you, stop bugging me. Find another source. There's plenty of plenty of information out there.
Yeah.
They got things to do too, So.
Okay, Doc, before ending today's very interesting in-depth conversation about IRB, I have a very important question at the end, and it is the most important question about today's topic, which is uh, people have a very different opinion on my new haircut. What is your view on that?
I like it.
Perfect. It's doc
I
approved
like
now.
I like short hair. I wore my hair short all my life.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Doc, for giving us the time and also giving us
Oh,
information
pleasure.
for
Pleasure.
IRB. I know it is going to be a huge help for anybody who is listening to this podcast. And also at the end of it, I would like to say that anybody who needs to get more information about IRB, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to provide you. Or if you have any suggestions and feedback on what should be our next podcast, please hit us up and let us know. We'll be more than happy to comply to that as well.
Yeah, like you said, the one piece of advice, if you have any questions on making sure you're not violating something, ask us. We're here to ask. I mean, ask your chair. Your chair will check with us, and then we'll get back to you on it. We would rather solve the problem, eliminate the problem early, than try to deal with it in retrospect or in hindsight. So if you got any questions, just ask us. It's not that hard. Just protect the people and treat them as humans.
Yeah.
So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here and listening. It has, as usual, it's been a wonderful podcast. Thank you.